Hey guys, it's me, Hand That Builds here, and today I'm doing a review on Art Model's 1/72nd scale Yakovlev Yak-36. NATO code name, the Freehand. Now, real quick, I want to say sorry for the hiatus. I know I promised to try to do around 3 videos a month, but obviously recently I've gone on a bit of a hiatus, so my new plan is to just, as I said, I believe before, I'm gonna chill with the models and gonna do more of a one model every month kind of video schedule. So yeah, no, sorry for not uploading. I know I'm a small channel, but you know, you gotta respect the audience. So let's get on to this kit. Art Model is a Ukrainian model manufacturer, and they mostly make limited production or short run production kits. Now, what that means is these kits are usually made with fairly cheap tooling that isn't meant to last. And because that tooling is cheap, that makes it so that they can make more, I guess, more niche models like these ones at the cost of overall quality. Because, you know, if you think of like high quality brands like Tamiya, they tend to spend like tens of thousands, and I've even heard people say hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single tooling, which they can then use for, you know, decades. I believe some of their oldest kits are 60 years old by this point, and that's because they invested so much money up front into them. And because of that, they tend to choose more popular topics, like, for example, P-51s or Spitfires, you know, things that are, you know, cool, but not exactly, you know, it's not niche. It's not, I shouldn't say not interesting, but more, you know, stuff that you would see every day compared to something like the Yak-36 here. So with limited production kits, the tooling's a lot cheaper, and that usually means the kit overall isn't amazing, but it does mean that you do get models of niche subjects, and I would rather have a mediocre to bad kit to no kit at all for the subject. So anyways, that's what Art Model usually does, and yeah. Art Model has been making kits for, I believe, the last 20 years, and so far I've built 2 of theirs. One was their BV155, I think that's what it was called, and that kit was just okay. It wasn't anything special. Fit was a bit finicky, but not terrible. The other one was the Yak 141 Freestyle, I think it is, or something like that. And that kit required a lot of work. So the overall quality can vary. I believe their more recent stuff is a lot better. So this kit in particular is from 2009. So I don't have high hopes for it, but from looking at the contents, it looks pretty good. All right, looking at the box here, we have some pretty good box art. We've got the Yak-36 right here. Side shows 2 different paint schemes. This does include many others, but these are the 2 different ones you can do, which is silver and then the naval paint scheme. Side, top, where it talks about all the stuff you may need, and side is basically the same. So let's open this up and see what's inside. Now, because this is a Ukrainian kit, or I guess Eastern European kit, they tend to have these really beefy and stiff boxes, which I like. All the parts are all in one bag, which is, or actually no, they're all in 2 bags. The clear parts are in their own separate bag, which helps prevent them from getting scuffed, but it would be nice to see these individually bagged just to prevent damage from them rubbing against each other. Nothing major, but, you know, just a preference. Inside, we have one of these Ziploc bags, which is nice because you can reuse them in case you don't finish the kit. And inside, I believe there are 4 gray sprues and 1 clear one, as well as some resin parts. It's all nice and laid out. Starting off the top here, we have the 2 fuselage halves. Here we have a nice hole for the jet nozzles. The Freehand is indeed a VTOL aircraft, so we do have resin parts that will go right here. And the cool thing about the Yak-36 is, unlike the Harrier, it only has 2 jet nozzles and they are in the center of the aircraft. Now that, coupled with a computer, allowed this aircraft to be a pretty good, not exactly a first attempt at VTOL, but the first attempt at a proper VTOL fighter for the Soviet Union. Flew pretty good from what I can tell and according to one of its test pilots. But it's getting a little off topic. Here we have manufacturer's mark, which is interesting. The fuselage halves they look a bit dirty, but if you actually paint the kit, I'm sure all this stuff will come out. Or if you clean it. It does seem that the wing does not have its own hole, it just has an outline, which is an issue, but it's not a major one. I'm sure if you have pins, you can just put some pins in there and then use that to keep the wings attached, because just gluing them makes them very prone to snapping off. You can see the panel lines, they don't look bad, they don't look amazing, but they are perfectly adequate. They seem pretty inconsistent. Or I shouldn't say pretty inconsistent, but they're a bit inconsistent. Their actual depth does not seem to be entirely consistent, but if you have panel liner, then it won't look too bad. You can see it's attached by the spine. Looking at the front here, looks like the 2 circular halves are actually not mismolded, which is very nice. Usually whenever you see nose inlets like this, especially on older MiG-21 models, they tend to be malformed or have excess plastic, but these look pretty good, so that's really nice to see. At the bottom half here, we can see the various landing gear bits, and one of the unique things about the Freestyle is it actually had a door that would fold out when it's in VTOL mode to prevent the jet blast from getting into the nose and affecting its thrust. It's like the tail is one singular piece, which is just fine. Might have a gap going through there, but that won't be hard for anyone to fix. No, does not seem like there's any detail for the cockpit on the sidewalls, which kind of leads me to believe that the cockpit is going to look a little Spartan, but what can you do? It's better than no cockpit at all. Overall, very nice. Some air inlets that you might have to drill out, but that looks pretty solid. Next up, we got the wings, which seems like they are in 2 separate halves. You might have a bit of a gap issue because you're going to have to lay these guys into there, but once again, that's a pretty easy gap to fill, and actually if you use super glue, that glue would be pushed out and should fill that gap pretty good. So that's my suggestion, but obviously when I build it I'll know better. Once again, panel lines look pretty fine, not amazing. Does not seem like this kit has rivet detail, which is unfortunate, but a rivet tool will be a pretty good solution. So, and by pretty good, I mean the obvious solution. Flipping over, we can see more of those wing pods. They're pretty good. Here we have the nose inlet, which looks like this tube here. I'm going to assume it's some sort of pitot tube. Looks like it's a bit mismolded. That is unfortunate because that does not look particularly easy to fix. And it's also on the top, so it's going to be very obvious, but that's just kind of one of the risks you run with limited run kits. I'm sure anyone with a reasonable amount of experience can fix that though. Looks like there was something in the center there, presumably part of the sprue that attaches the entire kit. Pretty nice. Alright, I'm going to do the next 2 together because they seem to be various bits and bats of parts of this aircraft. Doing this one first, looks like it is mainly tube-related things. Got the landing gear there that looks, once again, pretty Spartan. Some arms will look like the hard points for the missiles. Looks like you get 2 different ones, so This aircraft might be able to have a pretty interesting loadout. I'm just gonna assume that's the center console, which that is pretty sad looking, just no detail at all. But I did see we get a decal for that, so we'll see that later. Yeah, pretty minimal, but all of it looks pretty well done. That part looks a little weirdly molded, but they don't seem to be defective. Moving on to this one. Here we have, looks like the part of the air intake. Got two turbines molded there. Trying to catch it on the camera, but they look well molded. Landing gear bay doors. I did look at the instructions. You are going to have to cut that up if you are going to do it with the gear down, which isn't the worst thing ever. No idea what that is. Presumably landing gear, some tires, which, it's again, bare minimal. They do have a pretty obvious seam line, so that's going to have to get cleaned up before painting. No idea what that is. Probably the cockpit floor, if I had to guess. These two halves look like they are part of a fuel tank, which I'm sure we'll see it on the instructions. Also, I'm sure you've noticed none of these parts are marked with a number, so it's going to be a little interesting trying to build this aircraft, but not impossible. Landing gear bay, completely spartan. Flipping over to the back, I believe this is the front air blocker, which looks pretty decently molded, though. You might be cutting that one up. I have... No, you should be. You shouldn't have to. Overall, pretty decent parts. Not anything amazing, but as I said, limited production kit, this is kind of the quality you expect. Finally, we have the little baggie that contains all the various resin parts. It's cool that this comes with resin parts, but not always necessary. Here we have the nozzles, which looks like your only option is to have them in the back position. So if you're trying to position the aircraft like it's taking off, because it's a VTOL, you can't do that, which is unfortunate. Lot of excess plastic on the back, or excess resin. It's very smooth though. I always like running my finger across that. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be an interesting job to slowly shave all that off. I mean, actually, I'm just going to quickly try something. If I just put this in here, maybe you don't have to do too much cleanup. No, actually, no. Or maybe? Actually, yeah, you're gonna have to remove all that. Sometimes with resin parts, all the excess resin is hidden, so you don't have to spend 20 minutes just sawing it off, but it does look like this interferes with the cockpit, which is unfortunate, but oh well, can't always win. But yeah, these parts look good. Pretty solid. I'm sure a plastic assembly would honestly look just as good, but yeah, that, and you can also probably position them better. Now the ejection seat, on the other hand, if my shit would focus, sorry for the language. Ejection seat looks much better than any plastic part. It's gonna need some cleanup, but should do just fine. Seat belts and everything, all that is gonna have to get sawed off, as mentioned earlier. And then we have some rocket pods, which in real life, these were the only weapon system ever really carried, and honestly, I don't think they were even hooked up, because the freehand was just a prototype. It was, as I said, it was a pretty good aircraft in the beginning, but the big issue was that its engines just didn't produce enough thrust to offset any weight gain from adding new weapon systems like a cannon or missiles or anything. So I only had something like 500 kilograms to work with, I think is what the documentation said, which is a good bit, but that once you add a gun, missiles, weapon systems, and all that, you're you're gonna end up with a pretty limited aircraft. So, but anyways, that's getting off topic. These look good. Got all the holes. And finally, we have the clear part, which does have some flash on it. Also doesn't look particularly amazing. Yeah, it's pretty thick, so everything inside is going to look warped, but it is clear enough to see a decent amount of detail. It is properly shaped too. Should be too hard to mask, and also actually I have no idea what that's going to be for, probably a landing light. Here we have two blurbs about the aircraft in Ukrainian and English, or maybe Cyrillic. Here you have all the parts marked out, which, I mean, I would much rather have it on the sprue so that way you're not constantly going back and forth from this to the part and all that. It's a lot easier. Instructions themselves are very cluttered, but not impossible to follow. Honestly, just following common sense should do just fine. Yeah, nose intake, fuselage halves and wings, and nozzles, all that. Various small bits. Whatever that is supposed to be. Canopy and small parts. So honestly, this one bit right here is just going to be most of the building. Yeah, not really much to say about the instructions. They just kind of suck. And here's a painted example in silver. I mean, they suck, but they're not possible to follow. Here's the decals. Honestly, they look pretty good. Don't look really thick at all. Never used these before, even though I built those other kits I mentioned earlier. Instrument display, paint they put over the nose, and of course various numbers. This aircraft was painted with yellow numbers, but the red ones look pretty cool. It's good to have those options. Various stencils, and yeah, honestly, that's about it. So my final thoughts with this kit is, well, it's pretty decent overall. As I said, it is a limited production kit, so you're not exactly getting the best model in the world, but you are also getting, I think, the only kit you can get of the freehand, so could be a lot worse, but you would have to be an experienced modeler to really get the most out of this kit. The only things I would really want added is just all the parts to be marked on the sprue. For most, that doesn't sound like much because you already have them marked in the instructions, but the difference is pretty significant. And also just having a more detailed cockpit, as well as nozzles that actually can be displayed in 2 different ways. Anyways, thanks for watching. I know it's been a long hiatus of a few months, but I don't know. What can you do? Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.